Hi people, it's Archivist here with a review for 2013's Tomb Raider. Even the best games out there tend to have weaknesses. Sometimes the game will focus so much on enjoyable gameplay that the story is forgotten about. Occasionally the graphics become so much of a priority that every other element of the game is ignored. It's extremely rare for a game to be without any obvious weakness, but that's exactly what Tomb Raider has managed to accomplish, and here's why. Tomb Raider's story is one of many aspects. The first is the premise, which involves a group of explorers being shipwrecked on an island and forced to find a means of escape. Each of the game's characters are well developed and individually defined. For example, while Lara is chiefly interested in uncovering the island's mysteries, the fame-obsessed Dr. Whitman is more concerned with turning the whole ordeal into a glorified TV documentary. Occasionally, Lara will look at her camcorder, which gives us an insight into the characters' personalities before they were stranded. Naturally, Lara Croft is the star of the show, and her progression as a character from innocent archaeologist to experienced survival expert is perhaps the most compelling aspect to the game's narrative. Initially, Lara finds herself in quite a few dangerous situations that she is forced to adapt to very quickly. During the first third of the game, Lara's reactions to these situations show she is clearly being traumatized, but she gradually begins to take the pain in her stride. For instance, Lara's first human kill noticeably disturbs her, but it's not long before she becomes desensitized to the violence she inflicts on her enemies. While she certainly becomes a more efficient hunter, Lara never loses her humanity in the process. This makes her character a sympathetic one until the very end. Another aspect of the game's story is the mystery of the long-dead Empress Himiko. During the first portion of the game, you'll be wondering whether or not her supposed shamanistic abilities are more than just a myth. In terms of actual quality, the game's voice acting is superb, the story is well told, and the pacing is near perfect. The gameplay in Tomb Raider focuses primarily on spectacle, which may or may not be a good thing depending on what you're looking for in a video game. A good example of this would be the platforming. Although some of the set pieces where you desperately scramble across a rapidly falling environment is great to watch, it's not all that challenging. Furthermore, the combat certainly feels excellent, but it's not very difficult. The shooting mechanics work as you would expect of any third-person shooter, and it can feel quite mediocre with the exception of the bow and arrow. Using the bow to take out enemies is very satisfying as it requires careful aim. In the middle of a firefight, you are forced to maintain focus so as not to waste arrows. The bow is also an effective stealth weapon. It's incredibly fun to take out all the enemies in an area without them ever knowing you were there. All of Lara's weapons can also be upgraded. For example, the bow can fire explosive arrows, which are very powerful. The enemies you fight range from your standard bad guy with a gun to special enemies that make use of shields, which require you to dodge their attacks so you may shoot back at them when they are vulnerable. Additionally, there are physics-based puzzles which are fairly intuitive. They aren't too difficult to the point where they cause frustration, but they are nevertheless satisfying to complete. You have likely already noticed this, but I'll say it anyway. Tomb Raider's graphics are supremely good looking. The game looks its best in the natural forest environments, but even in shantytowns the game retains its polished visuals. The island itself allows for a lot of creativity in terms of what you're looking at. Sometimes you'll be on a cliff overlooking the ocean, and other times you'll be on a snowy mountaintop. The character models look great also, and there is a good degree of consistency. While Lara has been clearly given the most attention, the supporting cast are also well detailed. I am honestly not exaggerating when I say this is one of the best looking games currently available. Although you are looking at the PC version now, if I remember correctly the PS3 version also looked very good, certainly some of the best graphics on the console. There is also a multiplayer portion to the game, however I will admit to having very little experience with it. There are quite a few options in terms of progression, and the shooting felt just as good as it does in single player, with a few concessions made in the interest of balance. While this mode does exist, the game is worth getting based purely on the single player. Overall, Tomb Raider is a game that manages to impress on every level. The story is interesting and well told, the gameplay is satisfying and exhilarating, and the graphics are stunning. What's more is that the game has been re-released on PS4 and Xbox One in the form of a definitive edition, which may be worth a look. If you're a fan of action-adventure games, then you can't go wrong with 2013's Tomb Raider. As always people, thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.